Well, shalom everybody, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. I thought we would do another video looking at Ohr Avigdor Miller's new translation and commentary of the Mesillat Yesharim. Those of you that remember our last installment, you're going to see that we've jumped a huge amount of text to get where we are in this video. And it's not because we've missed a huge bit. I just simply share them as morning audio classes every morning to a bunch of people via WhatsApp, Signal, or Messenger. And if you're interested in receiving between 10, 15, 20, sometimes 30-minute audio class looking at this series, subject by subject, let me know in the comments. Put something down in the comments. I'll get in touch with you either by Messenger on Facebook, and I'll see that you have a morning audio segment from this series in your Messenger, WhatsApp, or Signal, or whatever platform, across a fair few platforms. And you can listen to it in the morning as you get ready, or in the car on the way to work. And that'll give you something very important to think about, and be a good piece of supplementary material to your already, hopefully, stacked Torah learning schedule that you have for yourself. So we're up to page 74 of volume 3. This series is a 4-volume set, is made up of a 4-volume set, and it comprises a series of lectures that were recorded onto audio cassette back in the 1980s by Rabbi Avigdor Miller, a very prominent Hasidic rabbi who was, quite a big hitter in the Musar world. In the world dealing with ethics and character refinement and development, things of that nature. So there's plenty here to astound you and challenge you and give you the motivation to take on board, or begin to take on board. And it's all part of our walk. It's all part of our journey. It's all part of our tikkun. It's all part of our repair, what we've been sent down to the world to do. We haven't been sent down here for nothing. We've been sent here for a purpose, but everybody's purpose varies. So the chapter we are into is chapter 15. We've finally reached chapter 15, and we're only just freshly in chapter 15, and it is entitled The Ways to Acquire Perishut. Now, what is the word Perishut, or Perishus in Ashkenazi? It is a word that shares a similar root to the word Perush, or Perushim plural, and that is where we get the word Pharisee. And so we're getting an insight. Well, what does it mean? First of all, before I go on about what insights we're going to get about the Pharisees, the word itself actually means to exercise self-control and to abstain from things. And not to go beyond what a person's needs are in physical things. Just acquire things in the right measure. And this will enable you to begin to develop spiritually and ascend and take on other traits and have success in these other traits as well. And so those of you that are thinking, hang on, aren't you teaching us to be like Pharisees here? And the short answer is, yes, I am, because Yeshua himself said, unless your righteousness doesn't exceed that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will not have a place in the kingdom to come. And so he is using the Sopharim and the Perushim, the scribes and the Pharisees, as a benchmark for holiness there to anybody that was listening to him at the time. And of course, recorded there by a scribe and people that have been reading that verse over and over throughout the centuries to today. So, really important subject, and I'm glad you popped onto the channel and have triggered off this video, because there's going to be some interesting and challenging things for you to look at. The first subject in the chapter that we looked at was the subject's not obligatory. When we study the subject, we have to constantly remind ourselves that it is not an obligation to limit our seeking of pleasure. Of course, pleasures that are harmful or wicked or forbidden are important for everyone to avoid, but the subject of Perishut is not about forbidding pleasures. We're talking about a higher level of achievement, of learning self-control in order to use only what's necessary and healthful. So it's not, we want to avoid sort of overindulging. We want to be able to partake of things that are permissible in the right measure. And the next subject we looked at was the reality of thinking about pleasures. The choicest way to acquire the attitude of Perishut is that a person should think into the worthlessness of pleasures in this world and how intrinsically low they are. And so Rabbi Avigdor Miller here looks at various things that the secular world take great pleasure in, such as eating at expensive restaurants, attending sporting events and following after sporting events, and being engaged and very highly focused on popular culture. So a lot of these things essentially really don't do much for us all at all in terms of improving us as people in the long term, if at all. A lot of these things are simply distractions from the Sitra Hura, the dark forces. Then we looked at the first sin. It's good to just kind of rehash. That was the persuasion that caused the very first sin to be committed. Like the Torah testifies, the woman saw that the tree was good for food. So no one would argue that the forbidden fruit was healthy to eat. It had good properties, and it certainly wasn't going to poison the person and make them die. But that wasn't the point of the command to forbid Adam and Hava to go anywhere near it. It wasn't due to the fact that it was harmful to eat. He simply said, I don't want you to eat it. And as a way of obeying that command, it would have been very much important for Adam and Hava not to be in close proximity of that tree, to limit their, at least 100% of the time, have themselves be nowhere near that tree, because you don't want to tempt fate. You don't want to brush up against the tree. And we see that Hava's interaction with the serpent had the element of her edging closer and closer to the tree until she touched the tree and nothing happened. Then she touched the branches and nothing happened, and she touched the actual fruit itself and nothing happened, and she broke the fruit off the tree and nothing happened, and then finally she ate the tree and nothing appeared to happen. And so these are the various angles of attack that the enemy employs to wear us down to get us to eventually sin. So that's what we learned there in terms of the first sin. We had the example of eating, when somebody eats a juicy steak or a beautiful dessert, an ice cream or something like that. There's an explosion of pleasure in the mouth, and the person begins to chew the food and swallow it, and then that pleasure goes away. And then that is repeated throughout the course of a standard meal. And then the person's full, and then they don't want to look at the side of food, for the next couple of hours or the next day or so, depending how much they ate. Which takes us to part 5 of chapter 15, which is where we're up to. So let's get into it, and we're going straight into the Mesillat Yesharim itself. And all the other pleasures in the world are the same. If a person would look into these pleasures and think about them, he would see that even the imaginary happiness that they give is only for a very short time, and the harm that can result from them can be very difficult and long term, such that it does not suit any intelligent person to put himself into the dangers that come from such pleasures, just for the small benefit of pleasure from the fleeting momentary delight, and that is obvious. Okay, so let's talk about intimacy. If somebody engages in an act of intimacy and they take it to a higher degree and they perhaps overindulge, they can become used to it. And so therefore it brings in what's called a process of diminishing returns. And so the person will have to continue to up the ante of the acts that a person does in those intimate moments to cause him to be aroused on the level that he was initially used to. So the person will continue to increase until possibly a person might be engaged in acts that are harmful, either to themselves or their partner or to both people. And so they're sort of aiming for these extremely powerful but fleeting moments of pleasure that could result in long-term ramifications, not so much spiritually even, but physically, that cause them to have physical health problems down the track. When a person accustoms himself and he continues to think about this truth, then little by little he will become free from the bonds of foolishness and in which the darkness of materialism binds him. Now, Rabbi Avigdor Miller says, materialistic practices are the chains of darkness that imprison the mind. If a person thinks about them, then using his mind, he can gradually liberate himself from the influence of these things. The rest of the world that doesn't think that way remains imprisoned in that darkness forever. So this is somebody who's maybe very passionate about collecting. You have a lot of people now in this day and age that are avid collectors. They've got a room, particularly if the kids have grown up and moved out. They've got a few extra rooms in the home rather than using them as rooms for other people to lodge in. They might set aside a room for somebody's Tupperware or not Tupperware. No one's who's collecting Tupperware. I mean, I guess people do. People can collect like lunch containers. Various pop culture icons. Will release merchandise with. So they might have a room set aside for their classic lunchbox containers from various films, merchandise from various different brands and so on and so forth. And they'll have people over and then they'll take them into the room and show them their immaculate collection of school lunchboxes. And they'll have them in nice ornate cabinets with lights on them and things like that. And so largely this is a waste of time. And ultimately, they're either going to sell them, they're going to get sick of looking at them and want to sell them, and then they'll embark on another collection. And the collection is all about the chase of growing the collection. And once you've acquired everything, you just I'm kind of over that after a year or so. And then it leads into the next one. So the world of materialism keeps leading you by the hand from one thing to another until you finally find yourself aged and decrepit and unable to walk on your own, and you have found that you've got nothing to show for it in terms of your spiritual endeavors. So we want to be very careful and be mindful of the fact that we don't want to be imprisoned by materialism. And the Mesillat Yesharim says, and he will not be persuaded by the lure of these false pleasures at all, but he will reject them, and he will know that he should only take from the world what is necessary, like I wrote above. Okay, and that's from section 13 and 20 and section 14 and 1, if you want to go back and have a look at those in chapter 15. In chapter 13 and chapter 14. So it's section 20 of chapter 13 and section 1 of chapter 14. Sorry about that. Okay, so that takes us to the next topic, part 6, obstacles to Perishut. We'll leave that to the next video. Thank you for joining me. Bye for now.